Hi, I'm David Johnson, and this is Verse by Verse. All of you who are regular listeners to this podcast know that the presenters generally focus on one specific scriptural passage each episode. Sometimes we try to show the richness contained in a passage. At other times, we may try to show how some section of Scripture has been misunderstood or misapplied, even by well-meaning people. The passage we will consider in this episode actually has both of those features. It has been misapplied by some, but the deeper meaning has also been overlooked. Here's the passage from Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 23. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. When some people read this verse, they think Paul is saying that we no longer need to be concerned about all those old laws contained in the Bible, and that as long as we feel that what we're doing is loving, we're free to disregard those regulations. Is that really what Paul meant when he said, all things are lawful for me? Was he actually saying that under the right conditions, it was lawful for him to lie, steal, commit adultery, or even kill someone? Most professing Christian denominations claim to staunchly believe in the Ten Commandments, while putting forward specious arguments for setting aside the Sabbath commandment. But even those who carelessly assume the Sabbath commandment doesn't apply to them would never say that Paul was claiming the right to engage in these other sinful activities. So what was he saying? When you read the context, Paul was explaining that all people are expected to live by the same standard. God does not have different standards for Jews and Gentiles. All are expected to live by the same code of conduct. Anything else would produce confusion and chaos. Is an activity lawful under God's inspired law? Then it was lawful for Paul to engage in it too. We might rephrase it to say, anything God permits others to do is permissible for me as well. But even as Paul made his claim to function as freely as any other Christian, he added an important caveat that should cause us to pause and consider our actions in light of an additional factor. He said that even though a specific action might be technically legal, the true Christian will ask himself or herself an additional question. Even though I know God permits this action, is this going to hinder or harm another person? Let's consider a couple of physical ways we might apply that principle. Suppose you invited a friend to your home for dinner, and you later realize that your friend was a vegetarian. God's law permits you to eat meat, but your guest, for whatever personal reasons, has chosen to avoid doing so. Applying Paul's principle, it is unquestionably lawful for you to eat meat. But if you served meat to your guest, it would be disrespectful of their beliefs. By serving a vegetarian meal, you're not compromising your beliefs, but you are being considerate of another person who may see things differently. Or, in another scenario, suppose you enjoy eating peanuts. There's certainly no law in Scripture specifically saying, thou shalt not eat peanuts. However, there are many people today who can have a life-threatening allergic reaction to peanuts, and for some, their sensitivity is so severe that a serious reaction can be triggered by simply smelling the peanuts. Here's another case where it is perfectly lawful for you to eat peanuts, but doing so in the presence of someone who has this allergy would be harmful to them. In applying this principle, the Christian must keep in mind that it begins with an action that is lawful according to God's standards. If your friend wants you to help him steal something, that's not lawful, so you cannot compromise with that. In a society that prizes personal rights and individual freedom, Paul's teaching calls Christians to a higher standard. A Christian first considers what is right before God, but he or she then seeks to be a genuine help to others, even when God's law does not specifically require it. Paul's words tell us that the decisions we make and the actions we take should be helpful, and in his words, they should edify or build up others. We're often quick to be judgmental of others and their actions. In contrast, this is a great way for me to evaluate my own Christianity. Paul says I need to continually ask myself 3 questions. 1, is it lawful according to God? 2, is it helpful to others? And 3, does it build up and encourage others? If I can say yes to all 3 of those questions, then I have an opportunity to show that God's way of life, the giving way, is the way to a happy and productive life. When our choices are lawful, helpful, and edifying, they show what being a Christian really means.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.